I am Marquis Bungabong Argalion, and we're tackling the topic about the background of John Stuart Mill. So, let's start. So, John Stuart Mill was a philosopher, political economist, and a member of parliament from England. He considered the most influential English-speaking philosopher of the 19th century. He also defended the freedom of individuals against absolute state power. So, si John Stuart Mill was born on May 20, 1806 in Pentonville in London, United Kingdom. His father is James Mill, and the renowned philosopher, a friend and disciple Jeremy Bentham educated him. So, he like his master was a child prodigy. So, pareha po siya sa iyang master. So John Stuart Mill was homeschooled. He also studied Greek at the age of 3 and Latin at the age of 8. He wrote a history of Roman law at the age of 11 and suffered a nervous breakdown at the age of 20. He worked with the firm until 1858 when he retired. So makita na to nga bisag sa at the early age John Stuart Mill was daghan na siya na achieve nga goals nga most of us dili pud ka bisagan ba dili pud kaya. So let's proceed. He was married to Harriet Taylor at the age of 20. 1 years of friendship they married in 1851, but Taylor died only 7 years later. So sayo namatay ang asawa sadly. They become long life companions despite of the fact that Taylor was married to someone else. His ethical theory and his defense of utilitarian views are found in his long essay entitled Utilitarianism in 1861. Mill died on May 18, 1873 in Avignon, France from erysipelas. Mill began working for the East India Company in 1823. Later in his life, Mill became a member of Parliament. He advocated that extending voting rights and gender equality and individual liberties there. So, ipag ay, so this is the sum of his works of John Stuart Mill. This includes on liberty, 1853, advocacy of wide exercise of choice and liberty of thoughts, taste, and association. Number 2 is utilitarianism, 1863, 3-point subjection of women in 1869. So subjection of women, 1869 defined the utilitarianism. Here is how Mill defines the defining principle of utilitarianism, the doctrine that the basis of moral utility of the greatest happiness principle and holds that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong and in proportion as they tend to produce reverse happiness. By happiness is meant pleasure and the absence of pain. By unhappiness is meant pain and the lack of pressure. So, to give a clear of moral standard set up by the theory, much more needs to be said, especially about what things the doctrine include in the ideas of pain and the pleasure and what extends the leave. This is open question, breaking down the definition of the there are some important concepts to note in this definition. So, utilitarianism is a theory that actions are right insofar as they produce unhappiness and wrong insofar as they produce unhappiness. So, for example, so suppose Jeffrey is choosing between going to movies tonight or staying home and meditating. So, if Jeffrey rather enjoys the movies but does not enjoy meditating and nobody else will be affected, then Jeffrey should go to see a movie because it creates more happiness. Pursuit of happiness is the relevant reason deciding what to do. So, the solity of is the property that produces the opposite pleasure. Examples is pain, boredom, frustration, and etc. The goals of utilitarianism is to try maximize utility, thereby creating the most good and the greatest number of people. The greatest happiness principle holds that we should pursue actions that produce the greatest amount of overall happiness. Crucially, utilitarianism think we must take into account of utility of everything affected by a given decision. We should maximize overall utility. Mills tells in his autobiography that the little work with the name utilitarianism arose from the unpublished material that the greatest part which he completed the final years of his marriage to Harry Taylor, that is before 1958. So sa form John Stuart Mill is choose if it makes you happiness, basta walay maapakang tao happiness sunda imo ganahan nimo. So John Stuart Mill, for its publication, he brought old manuscript into form and added some new material. The work first appeared in 1861 as a series of 3 articles for Frances Magazine, a journal that through dedicated at an educated audience was by no means is a philosophical organ. Mill planned from the beginning a separate book publication which came to the light in 1863 when even if the circumstances of the genesis of this work gestures to an occasional piece with a popular goal on closer examination, utilitarianism turns out to be a carefully conceived work rich in through. One must not forget that since his first reading of Bentham in winter of 1821 to 22, that the time which Mills dates his conversation to utilitarianism's 40 years had passed. So this taken this way, utilitarianism is everything but a philosophical accessory. And instead of the programmatic text of a thinker who for decades had understood himself as a utilitarian and who is profoundly familiar with the popular objections to the principle of utility in moral theory. So that's all sa akong